It's impossible to forget the rivalry between Ippo and Miyata. It was practically the first thing we saw when we started watching Hajime no Ippo. It all began with that first sparring match in episode 1, and after a few episodes, as we watched our protagonist get familiar with boxing, we got to see the second match, and after that, the score was even. 1 win for Ippo, 1 win for Miyata. The promise was set. They had to meet in the final of the East Japan Rookie Tournament. That was supposed to be the original ending of Hajime no Ippo. According to the author himself, in an interview we discussed in a previous video, Ippo would win and that would be the end of the manga, but that match never happened. Miyata was defeated by Ryo Mashiba, and so the tournament final changed course. Ippo ended up facing Ryo instead, who became another fierce rival on his path. From there, both Ippo and Miyata began walking their own paths as boxers. Ippo went the route of becoming Japanese champion, climbing the rankings and facing strong opponents, like Volk Zangief, Eiji Date, and Takeshi Sendo, and he defended his belt against monsters like Sawamura. Meanwhile, Miyata took the Pacific route. He left Japan to climb the world rankings, fighting ranked opponents from other countries. Eventually, he became Eastern Pacific champion after defeating Arnie Gregory. So both had a belt, but their paths started to drift apart. Still, as they both kept winning, one thing became obvious. They were both featherweights, they were both Japanese. And even within the manga, fans were asking, who's stronger? Ippo was steadily climbing the Pacific rankings, getting closer and closer to Miyata, who, at that time, was already a step ahead, holding a regional championship, not just a domestic one. Then came chapter 706. Sendo had just defeated his first Mexican opponent, a world-ranked fighter named Jose Ramirez. It all happened in Osaka, and as a good host, Sendo took Ippo and Itagaki to eat okonomiyaki, a local specialty from his hometown. During their meal, Sendo shared that he had sent a direct challenge to Ichiro Miyata. He wanted to take the Pacific belt from him, but Miyata declined, because the fight Miyata truly wanted was against Ippo. By that point in the story, it had been confirmed. Those two were destined to fight, so Sendo, after being rejected by the Pacific champ and finding no real rivals left in Japan, set his sights on the world stage. He decided to go straight for Ricardo Martinez. And as usual, during their chat, Sendo kept pressuring Ippo. He asked him, "What are your goals? What are your plans? What do you want to do next?" But we know Ippo. He hesitated. All he said was that he had his eyes on his next opponent. This disappointed Takeshi, and for reasons we won't get into in this video, he left. But before leaving, Sendo said something. He told Ippo he'd never fight Miyata because they just weren't destined to fight. That was his gut feeling. Something deep inside told him that fight was never meant to happen. Instead, Ippo's fate was intertwined with his, and that's easy to see. They've already faced off twice as professionals. Before walking away, Sendo made a promise. He told Ippo they'd meet again in the ring, but this time on a stage at the very top. And those words from Sendo have only grown stronger with time, especially since the long-awaited match between Ippo and Miyata never happened. Once again, it was Miyata who messed it up. First, he lost to Mashiba, and now he rejected Ippo himself to face another boxer, Randy Boy Jr. And honestly, that's understandable. Randy Boy Jr. was the son of the man who had knocked out Miyata's father, ended his career, and took everything from him. And let's not forget, his father's retirement is what first inspired Ichiro Miyata to box in the first place. To prove that his fighting style was valid, that it was right, that he wasn't wrong, so as a form of redemption, Miyata took the challenge. He wanted to overcome the wall his father could never surpass. And so, the fight between Ippo and Miyata was postponed indefinitely. their paths grew even further apart. But both boxers were sure of one thing: as long as they kept boxing and stayed in the same weight class, they were bound to meet. That belief existed in both Ippo and in Miyata. But in a way, Miyata made himself a prisoner of that promise. Because even before he became Pacific champion, we could already see it. He was suffering. He was struggling with weight control, which is pretty natural. When he met Ippo, they were both just kids, 17 or younger, still growing, still developing. They were natural featherweights back then. But over time, Miyata became a man, slightly taller than he was in his teens, and his body stopped fitting the featherweight class naturally. He's closer to a lightweight now, 2 divisions above featherweight. His dad knows this, Sendo knows this. In fact, at one point, though I can't recall the chapter, Sendo told him it wasn't worth fighting anymore. He saw Miyata as a half-dead boxer. He told him to move up in weight. But of course, Miyata refused, because he was still waiting for Ippo. And then, the fateful day came. Ippo retired. Naturally, this hit Miyata hard. He must have been filled with doubts. What do I do now? Even though Miyata tends to act cold, Ippo was still his goal in the pro ring. And when you lose your goal, you lose your sense of direction. We could see that in his fights. He was still winning, but the victories were pathetic. Only in recent chapters and story arcs have we seen him show some renewed energy. But in the beginning, right after Ippo retired, his matches were just plain sad. Why was Miyata fighting like that? Why was he still torturing his body if Ippo was no longer on the horizon? Simple, because he never gave up hope. He always believed Ippo would return to the ring. In fact, he keeps showing up wherever Ippo is, always trying to confirm something. He sees Ippo training his students with power, with speed, like he's still an active boxer. And that's why Miyata keeps holding himself in the featherweight class. He's waiting for the day Ippo returns, because seeing him so active, so strong, still training hard, he hasn't lost hope. He's not the only one waiting for Ippo to come back. We are too. And that's why I want to throw a question into the air. Would it even be right for them to fight as professionals now? If they fight as featherweights, Miyata won't be at his ideal weight. He'd be stepping into the ring nerfed, and honestly, that would give Ippo the perfect excuse to win without anyone questioning the outcome. But in a match of this magnitude, I'm not sure I want that. Do I really want to see them face off in a pro ring if Miyata can't go all out? That's why many fans dream of a different kind of reunion, one behind closed doors. A sparring match in the gym, just like it all began. Something like the final scene in Rocky 3, where Rocky and Apollo settle their score away from cameras, away from fans, just between the two of them. Many also suggest that maybe Ippo should just move up in weight, but that would be weird, for 2 reasons. First, we've been told countless times that Ippo's a natural featherweight. He doesn't need to cut weight. So if he moved up, he'd have to force his body. He'd lose speed, maybe even flexibility, meaning he'd be the nerfed one this time. Honestly, I don't think there's a right answer that could satisfy everyone if the fight happens in the pro ring. Even if both were in their prime, Miyata would still have that thought. Would it be unfair? So let me ask you, do you think this fight will ever happen? Let me know in the comments. And remember to subscribe for more Hajime no Ippo content and become a channel member if you want to support me. Good night, champ.